welcome to the first episode of Gravediggers Unite, a podcast dedicated to the fighting organization of the poor and dispossessed here in the belly of the beast, United States of America, and beyond. If you're out there organizing, making art, preaching good news to the poor, educating and agitating, if you're wondering what is to be done or where do we go from here, we're here for you. Not with all the answers, but with a good amount of experience and a whole lot of commitment. We're your hosts, Willie Baptist, Ciara Taylor, and I'm John Wessel-McCoy, and we're glad you're joining us. And I hope you walk away today with a little bit more clarity, a little bit more competence, a little bit more commitment, and a little bit more connectedness. So Willie, we're calling all the Gravediggers to unite. What do we mean by that? Who are the Gravediggers?
Well, we're referencing the Manifesto of the Communist Party written by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, and I want to read a selection from that document. The modern bourgeois society that has sprouted from the ruins of feudal society has not done away with class antagonisms. It has but established new classes, new conditions of oppression, new forms of struggle in place of the old ones. Our epic, the epic of the bourgeoisie, possesses, however, this distinctive feature. It has simplified the class antagonism. Society as a whole is splitting up more and more into two great hostile camps, into two great classes directly facing each other. Modern industry, therefore, cuts under the feet the very foundation on which bourgeoisie produces and appropriate products. What the bourgeoisie therefore produces, above all, are its own gravediggers. Its fall and the victory of the proletariat are equally inevitable. Today, we see this statement, this analysis by Marx and Engels as applying globally. It's taking place globally, and with this unheard of and unprecedented technological revolution in terms of computers and robots and AI has shaped this proletariat, where we see a growing struggle of the poor and dispossessed section of it, who are fighting globally as well as domestically. And what we want to talk about is those struggles and how they issue from an economy that is going into deeper and deeper crises, which is mostly affecting this segment of the population, that is the poor and dispossessed section of the working class, of the proletariat. So this is what we mean by the gravediggers. These are the people who have to kill the system because the system is continuously killing it.
Right on. Thank you, Willie. Appreciate that. That's what this show is going to be about. Those are the kind of conversations we're planning to have. And we're going to bring in some comrades as we go and really lift up the stories, these sort of untold stories and of the fighting organizations of the poor and dispossessed. What I want to say here, because I think our job here today is just to kind of introduce ourselves, get people, a little sense of who we are and where we're coming from. I've learned in this work as an organizer over the years and an educator is that you need comrades. You need to find yourself some people, some collectivity, build that collectivity with some people who can, think through the tough challenges and questions together, build trust with folks, and you need folks with whom you can study as well as struggle together. And so to that extent, that's what this podcast is about. It's what it values. And I think, I hope we can demonstrate that a little bit of the collectivity, the real love we have for each other and the sort of commitment that we share and how we hold each other. And so let's do a little bit of introducing ourselves today. I think it's good for us to start here with you, Willie. And I was wondering if you could introduce, yourself, just kind of where you're coming from and how you got into this work as an organizer.
Hey, well, first of all, hello everybody. My name is Willie Baptist, Laco Baptist Church. I've been poor all my life. I'm now 75 years old. Uh, I've been homeless on the streets of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for a good spate of time. I've worked all sorts of jobs, all kinds of jobs, low-income jobs. I've worked, for example, at Harvey Aluminum, where I became this uh, organizer of the Steelworkers Union. And I was also I've been organizing in poor communities and among the homeless for over 55 years. I've studied the revolutionary theory of Marxism. I've been studying it for over 50 years now. And I've used that in my work of organizing the poor. I was 10 years the educational director of the Kensington Welfare Rights Union, which was basically a merger between the old National Welfare Rights Organization, National Welfare Rights Union, and the International Union of the Homeless. And I did education among the poor during that period as the education director of that organization for over 10 years. I was 8 years board member of the Picture of the Homeless in New York, a senior advisor now of the National Union of the Homeless. To know me, you need to know the events that shape who I am and what I do today and my commitments. There's a lot of events, being as old as I am, there's a lot of things that shape me, but two of the major events I would say would be my experience that I had growing up in Watts, California, which is got to be one of the poorest, if not the poorest community at that time in the entire state of California. August 11, 1965, Watts broke out in militant protests against the inhuman conditions that existed there. We had upwards of 60% unemployment, particularly among the youth. The relationship with the police in Watts was bad, and there was a number of harassments and police killings that really ignited the Watts Uprising when some 60,000 to 100,000 people hit the streets in militant protests. I was part of that whole struggle, and it really shaped me. And the conditions that exist, the economic conditions that exist among that section of the working class, are conditions that was mainly focused, concentrated in the Black ghettos throughout the country. And Watts, the uprising in Watts kind of inaugurated in the big cities, the Black ghettos throughout the country. And over the course of the latter half of the 60s, over 300 cities erupted in violent protests against the conditions that existed in these ghettos. This was part of the Black community of the poor and dispossessed. There was other sections like in LA at that time, besides Watts, there was a Black community called Baldwin Hills. We called it the Black Beverly Hills. Those were the upper class Blacks who were professionals. They were subject to, police profiling and racial profiling and so on. But the concentration of police brutality and where the eruption of protests took place was largely in the area in and around Watts. It wasn't. This is what happened in shaping who I am, and the condition that exists then are conditions that are now not just facing the Black poor and dispossessed, but also other sections of the poor, including poor whites, Latinos, and so forth. But anyway, I'm still a student of Watts. I'm still learning what was the condition that gave rise and how those conditions are finding expression today and have become more widespread, have become globalized, and what that means in terms of the struggles of the poor and dispossessed. I was also an organizer with the Homeless Union. we organized during the latter half of the 80s and the first half of the 90s. It was the first of its kind where homeless men and women organized themselves in some 25 states. We organized 25 locals of the homeless union. And it was evidence of the fact that we were homeless but not helpless, that we could think for ourselves, we can speak for ourselves, we can fight for ourselves, we can organize ourselves, and we can lead not just ourselves, but the nation. I mean, the homeless and the poor population represent a huge and growing reservoir of unsung saints and geniuses who are having to make a way out of no way. And this, of course, it collides with the prevailing stereotypes. But the fact is that in order to survive and to struggle within this society at the bottom of society, you have to be able to develop street smarts, and an understanding of your situation. So we want to get into some of that. I'm just part of that whole development in terms of leaders and others that are emerging out of the struggles of the poor and dispossessed. But those are the two major events that really shape who I am. If you want to know who I am, you have to understand what those events were, what they're doing, and what's happening today with the struggles of the poor and homeless today in the richest country in the world, in the United States as well as globally.
That's powerful. I think when I'm hearing you talk about this, Willie, I think that we are, really, we're going to spend a lot of time like going back, I think, through and looking deeper into all the different lessons from, whether it's around Watts and the experience you had as a youth, kind of coming out of that all the way through to the organizing work of the National Union of the Homeless, and which was like mid to late 80s, right? Is the like when do we mark kind of the start?
85 was when the first
85.
local union was formed in
Right.
Philadelphia. So
In Philly.
It was
Yeah.
85 to 1995.
Yeah. And these struggles for survival and these this expression of organization of people who are just getting thrown out. I know we're going to get into a lot of like kind of how the economy has changed and the role of technology, and we're going to hit up on that, I think, maybe in some episodes very soon. But as a way to kind of keep sort of telling our story of like how we all know it, and we've been working together for years. I realize that you and I, Willie, we have known each other. Going into the next year, it'll be 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies. Time flies.
Time flies. And where does it all go? But I thought that might be a good way for us to sort of, kind of keep the story going, because it's, it's a little, we're a little like Wizard of Oz, and I guess you're Dorothy in this story, Willie. Anyway, but we're
that's interesting.
Yeah, and I got to know you in 2004, and I guess I'm the scarecrow, because no, because I don't have a brain, but no, I'm from the Midwest, and I grew up in a cornfield. I met you in New York City, and my wife Colleen and I had just moved out there so that she could attend Union Theological Seminary. And you were coming up from out of the work you had done out of Philadelphia, working in Kensington, and working, all this history stretching back from the National Union of the Homeless all the way up to, and we'll go into greater details, I think, at some point, and bring some folks on actually from the Cairo Center. But back in the day, there was this student-led initiative, and my wife was part of that in 2004. Of founding the Poverty Initiative. We had just moved from Chicago to New York City, and we show up at Union in right as this sort of effort, this work is coming about at Union with Liz Theo Harris and you came along soon after.
Mm.
Um, a little about myself. I had been so I grew up in Decatur, Illinois, and I'll go maybe sometime down the road a little bit more into details around the strikes that happened when I was in high school. But I grew up in a kind of a small industrial city right in the center of the state. I was in high school in the mid 90s when the strikes, there were three of the four big employers in town. The workers went on strike. They were all at strike all at once. Actually, the with Staley, the corn processing plant, it was a 3-year lockout, and that had a big impact on me as a youth. Growing up there, and our town was really sort of impacted hard. But that was a particular moment around organized labor that I think marked a kind of a period both of like folks struggling and fighting but also losing. And but that turned me on to, or made me sort of really conscious about issues around class and labor. And um I worked as a union organizer. In fact, when we met, Willie, I was working as a union organizer with Acorn and the United Federation of Teachers. I had been working on it. I worked on a campaign for a few years there when we were first in New York with childcare providers, and I'd had a lot of different kinds of experiences over the years around this type of style of organizing, whether it was like trade union organizing or it was the sort of Alinsky style community organizing. Those were sort of my first exposures to like what it looked like to make this fight. And then, it just really, I've been thinking a lot about this lately of like, kind of connecting with the style and the sort of the approach to organizing among the poor and dispossessed that um was very distinct in terms of what you and Liz and the folks were bringing to the table. And so I got involved, started working with the Poverty Initiative there at Union, and was have been kind of with you ever since, right? And so um, I kind of come from a working class background. I'm a Midwestern guy, and I'm very um, I think before I kind of came into this work, like I had a lot of those kind of like these different kinds of approaches. And the thing that I think really was distinctive about us working together was just this emphasis on leadership development and the focus of, well, first of all, this idea that poor folks can fight for themselves, and they can think for themselves, and they can provide leadership, right? Not just for themselves, but for the whole of our society. um and this other thing of like we all often say in this work of like it's not just the plight, but it's also the fight and the insight, right? Sort of the genius of
Yes,
the
yes.
work that comes out of like the welfare rights struggles and homeless organizing. And I think over time we'll bring in like folks from like the United Workers and put People First Pennsylvania and Vermont Worker Centers and just comrades out there that are really sort of building organizations among the poor and dispossessed. But the other thing that I love working with you, Willie, over these years is just like this emphasis on political education and specifically around history, right? We started working together on and within the Poverty Initiative and within, back then it was called the Poverty Scholars Program, this network of grassroots, emerging leaders, community and religious leaders, getting together, having strategic dialogues, developing ourselves as kind of a network of dedicated and committed leaders. This emphasis on history, right? The history of the struggles of the poor and dispossessed, particularly looking for those times when folks on the bottom here in this country have and beyond like have like united across the historical lines of division, across color lines, Southern Tenant Farmers Union, the work of the miners struggle in West Virginia, and especially the significance of like this history of abolition and Civil War and Reconstruction. So I think I credit you, Willie, for the first, I think you turned me on to Black Reconstruction and really studying Du Bois,
Yeah.
and really understanding the real revolutionary content and possibility and importance of Reconstruction, and really studying what particularly using the amazing insights and analysis that Du Bois brought. So this is a long way for me to say that I started working in our network of like, we developed political education and these like studies of history, and we really started getting into the, I think the significance, especially of the abolitionist movement before the Civil War, the sort of development
Yeah.
and the stages of development that lead up to the real revolutionary situation that the Civil War was, which is, I think, kind of where Ciara and I kind of come together, right? So I wanted to kind of open things up and bring Ciara, as we ease on down the road here, um, and think think a little bit. So here we are working together, Poverty Initiative, moving towards the Poor People's Campaign, and it was around 2017, Ciara, that it was the summer of 2017, and you were coming in the mix here, and we worked together. The first thing we ever did together was we were developing what's become the Lessons from the Movement to End Slavery curriculum. And this is this like class that's designed for organizers and fighters, making thinkers out of fighters and fighters out of thinkers, to study the abolitionist movement. And we were working actually with Put People First Pennsylvania back then in 2017 with their Mother Jones leadership program. And you came in the mix along with our comrade Kevin Kang, and so how'd you meet up with us? Let's see if you take it from there. I guess you're the Tin Man.
I was about to say, I wish I would have known that we were going to do these
I'm just
as
playing. I don't
quiz
know.
references.
I don't know.
But
You know
I
what's
was
going to
trying to
end
think, I was
up.
like, would I be the Tin Man or the Cowardly Lion, Toto? No. Yeah,
Yeah.
so exactly. I came into the mix in 2017. I was coming out of Florida. I'd been organizing with the Dream Defenders down there. We started the Dream Defenders after the killing of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin in 2012. And I mean, by the time, 2017 rolled around, I was just burnt out. I was struggling. I felt
Mhm.
really lost. I felt just really depressed. I felt really uninspired. I didn't know what it was. I tell people all the time, like I tried everything, crystals and somatics and yoga and incense and, just all the things. Not to say that those things don't work, but I think that what was actually really helpful for me was coming into relationship with you all, and in particular thinking about this movement to end slavery and the abolitionist movement. I think coming from an organization who at the time, we went through different stages of trying to understand the context that we were in, or or what we were really facing. And I think, like many folks, I say myself in particular, at a point in time when trying to understand why, young people like Trayvon Martin were being killed, or, why these, these huge occurrences of police brutality, mass incarceration were happening. And I think that, you know, on the surface, what we thought we saw, or, you know, what I feel like people were, you know, telling us is like, oh, it's just race, it's just race, it's just this race issue. People hate Black people. That's just how it's always been. That's just how it's always going to be. And I think that, yeah, I mean, it just really put me in a position of just like, where do you go from there? Uh, but actually, like, through political education and through really understanding the enemy, and how this country was formed, founded, the practices, the processes, the ways in which, um, you know, the ruling class has manipulated and divided, the poor and dispossessed, and using, you know, these racial lines, but really hiding the fact, you know, hiding you know, this underlying sort of system of oppression and dispossession, um, the role of the state, all of that, you know, and it just really opened up, I think, getting into that history and sort of understanding, I think, really actually opened up, this struggle for me in a way that hadn't before. I was able to see, you know, sort of new opportunities for us to really build, and build a movement, and being able to connect with these different people, different fronts of struggle that, you know, we're in relationship with. And so, yeah, that was my first project with John, and with Willie. I think our first project was getting into the history of the Watts Uprising,
Yeah.
and the way in which, you know, you developed as a leader, Willie, and how you were able to understand Watts helped me to try to understand my own circumstance and my own, you know, sort of conditions. And so, yeah, it's been a journey, but I'm really happy, excited that we get to engage in this podcast in this way, and just looking forward to sharing some of the lessons that, you know, we've learned along the way, and just sharing you all with others.
Right on. So, do we miss anything? I know we missed. I'm thinking of a bunch of stuff we could talk about, but I don't know. Willie, did we get it right? Did we miss anything?
Well, we got a lot to talk about because the
Yeah.
struggle is still unfolding, and it's getting bigger and it's getting global.
Mhm.
Like, I think the point I would emphasize is a point that Ciara just made about how since since the defeat of Reconstruction, the poor and dispossessed section of the population has been a growing section, and has also been the most disunited, the most disorganized, most racially segregated, the most disenfranchised, and the most imprisoned section of the population. And that's not been an accident. The powers that be, the people who control the economy and control our country, has been able to cruelly manipulate that bottom as a means of controlling this country and to project that power worldwide. So I think as we get into bringing forth these leaders who have been in the trenches, organizing the bottom, which is what the powers that be have always cautioned against. Not only cautioned, they've actually eliminated the likes of Dr. King
Yeah.
and Fred Hampton, people who actually organized the bottom. That's a no-no in terms of the strategy of the ruling class. So that's what we want to try to get into with these sessions that we're having. The three of us are just a product of that process. We're part of that process, and it's a process that's still unfolding, and it looms to get even larger and much more a factor and force in this country's existence. I mean, it's going to be a force to be reckoned with as far as we're concerned.
How's that sound to you, Ciara? Seems like something we can do. Yeah. Together, maybe we can do this. Together, maybe we can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna kind of bring this part to the close. But I'm gonna bring the Wizard of Oz up again, right? Because I think one of the things that I get this from you, Willie, too, right? Is that like for us to know the poor and dispossessed, right? Like to understand where the people who have little or nothing to lose, the people that are
Yes.
going to be the new and unsettling force, in this complacent national life. The other part that I think we got to spend time on, and we plan to spend time on, is that we got to know our enemy, right?
Yeah.
And we got to know our enemy, and we got to know our relative, strength, the relationship between these forces, and the middle, the folks that are caught in the middle of that. And the thing, what maybe down the road we'll talk a little bit, all the Wall Street tours that I used when I
Yes.
lived in New York City. I'm in Indiana right now, but I used to live in New York City with these three comrades. We used to be neighbors, and we used to be able to see each other a lot. Um, but the back in the day with the Wall Street tour, it always came up that of like, this thing you talk about, Willie, the man behind the curtain, right? Like the Toto, that little dog reveals, behind that great and powerful Oz, it's just some little huckster, some grifter behind the curtain. And so we got to know our enemy, and that we're going to get into that. So for now, I think we're going to close it out, and we're going to pick back up, and we're going to keep talking about the train today, organizing here in the United States and making a fight that connects with comrades around the world, but really, really knowing kind of how to make a fight right here in the U.S. So we'll catch y'all next time, and y'all take care of each other.